Hare Krishna. Welcome to our channel, Bhagavad-gita. Here it is, because we have Bhagavad-gita as it is, translated and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. My name is Bhagavad-gita. We are starting to speak about the three modes of material nature in the 14th chapter. Stay with us.
Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalang.
So we are starting with the text 5 in chapter 14, and I read the Sanskrit because I really like the Sanskrit. Sattvang radyastama iti guna prakriti sambhavaha nibadnanti mahabaho dehi dehi namavyayam. Material nature consists of three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the eternal living entity comes in contact with nature, O mighty armed Arjuna, he becomes conditioned by these modes. So this verse, many of the words here in the Sanskrit are very familiar because we use them all the time. Sattvam, that's the mode of goodness. Raja is the mode of passion. Tama, the mode of ignorance. Guna, the qualities. Prakriti, material nature. Sambhava, produced of. Dehi, this body. Dehinam, the living entity. Who is in the body? Dehi and Dehinam. Avyayam, eternal. So the the eternal living entity comes in contact with nature. He becomes conditioned by these modes. So that's us. When we're in this body, I'm fully convinced that I'm a human being. I'm a middle-aged Swedish lady. What else could I be? The only problem with this idea is that when this body is finished, I will leave it and find another body. Before I was born in this body, I had a different body, and I do not remember it. It is, Krishna knows, and it's also recorded somewhere in the mind. Sometimes you can take these memories out with hypnosis. A few people remember it automatically. But then the idea, if you would have that memory, this life would be really strange. Even when you don't have that memory, sometimes life is very strange. But to understand this, to understand it deeply, that because we are in the middle of these modes of nature, they condition us, our understanding of ourselves, who we are. Purport. The living entity, because he is transcendental, has nothing to do with material nature. Still, because he has become conditioned by the material world, he is acting under the spell of the three modes of material nature. Because living entities have different kinds of bodies, in terms of the different aspects of nature, they are induced to act according to that nature. This is the cause of the varieties of happiness and distress. And when we look at human being, it's a little less obvious because we have a certain amount of free will. We have a certain body, we have certain senses, we function in a certain way, but we don't, mindlessly, automatically act on those natures. Look at the animal kingdom, or even the plants, and there it will be more obvious. A tiger cannot suddenly decide to be vegetarian. A dog cannot start to study philosophy. A tree will reach out for the sun with all the branches and all the leaves, and especially flowers. And the roots will reach out to find the water. And that's a direction, that's kind of an expression of the free will. But that free will is so conditioned by that particular body. Like, I'm a human body now. My entire existence does not consist of me trying to dig my legs down to find the water. I also need to have to drink. I can put my ginger tea in a cup and bring it with me. So I have more ability for free will. But as long as I identify with this body, that ability is very limited, and also I am not fully able to see myself. What am I, and what is my conditioning? sometimes we see that, I want to say especially in young people, but maybe it's not just in young people, but maybe especially that teenage period of life where you have to kind of find your own identity, and then you grab your identity. I'm sure everything is different now, but my memory is that identity meant music and style. So you dressed a certain way, you listened to certain music because that was you. And those other people who listened to different music and had different clothes, yeah, they were not your people, they were all different. And then you grow up a little bit and you look back at whatever period, the 70s, and these styles and musics, they kind of merge together and they look all the same in the perspective of looking back. And that's not my identity. It wasn't my identity then, but conditioned by the modes of material nature, I identified with it. And now I'm here, and I'm probably identifying culturally with other things that are not that important. They are not that important. And we see how it creates frictions and conflicts, and sometimes in very interesting ways. Prabhupada used to kind of say that to identify with the land of your birth, to consider the land of your birth to be like a holy place of pilgrimage. That's the mentality of cows and donkeys. Human beings, we should have a little bigger vision. We should have a little wider perspective. And we shouldn't just sit around and think, I'm from this country and this country is really very good. And if somebody comes here from a different country, either they shouldn't come at all or they should be completely forced to adopt my culture because that's obviously the best. Well, culture is good. I mean, you cannot live without culture. But we need to understand these differences in the material world. They are just conditioning. Because of our karma, because of our association with the modes of nature, we pick up that identification and we act according to it. And we can't help it. In this world, we can't help it. We see that over time. Like sometimes you read something like a historical novel or something, and then you have the writer, the author, who is obviously not 500 years old. So the author is from this time, and sometimes that perspective shines through. You'll have one person who is intelligent like a modern person and kind of rejects all of that superstition of the Middle Ages in a very unrealistic way, because if the author had actually lived at that time, they would have been conditioned by that kind of idea, by that kind of culture, because that's what we're like. We will identify with our town and we will, root for that football team or ice hockey team. And it's kind of natural and it's also superficial. And the way out of it is to find the real identity. Because ultimately we're not this body. We're the soul within the body. And it is possible for us to connect to our spiritual nature by starting to practice, Krishna consciousness, a yoga method, a religious method, a spiritual process for self-realization. And we will still have a body, and we will still live in a society, and there will be culture in it. But that will not be fully our identification. And the three modes of material nature, they will still be all around us, but we will have some knowledge. We will have the ability to discern what to do, how to act, what to accept, and what not to accept, because these modes of material nature, they are not created equal. They're all material. Ultimately, the perfection does not come from... We will hear more about these modes of nature. I mean, the whole chapter is about those modes of nature. So the mode of goodness, that is enlightenment, peacefulness, purity, duty. And it is much better. It is much better, because when we have a certain amount of the mode of goodness in our life, in society, we avoid the pitfalls of the mode of passion and ignorance. Mode of passion is striving, frustration. It will give us an ulcer and it will start a war. Mode of ignorance is darkness, ignorance, laziness, destruction. And one of them slides into the other one of them, and all of them, both of them drag us down, which the mode of goodness doesn't drag us down. If we are overly attached to the material mode of nature, that will not mean that we're spiritual. That will not give us spiritual advancement. But life in the mode of goodness will give us a solid platform on which to perform spiritual life. So it is better, but it's still material. But we need to understand them, we need to see them. And we need to approach them, the modes of material nature, from the perspective of spiritual life, of Krishna consciousness, because otherwise, it's just another... Well, culture is good, culture is important, culture is how we live. And if that culture can be predominantly in the mode of goodness, and if that culture can be supportive of our spiritual life, then that is the best of two worlds. In either case, it's important to understand how things work in this world, especially for a spiritualist. Maybe that's not true. Maybe it's just as important for somebody who isn't a spiritualist. But we can't think that, okay, now we are not doing the material world anymore, we're just going to be spiritual, we're just going to rise above this world, which we can do, yes. But if we don't understand it, if we don't understand what holds us back, what pulls us down, what the challenges are in this world, then it will be very difficult. So this chapter, it's there for us. I hope you will come with us to the next time. We try to post this updates every Tuesday and Fridays. Sometimes I forget, but then it will be back the next time. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for watching. We aim for updates every Tuesday and Friday. Please come back. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down there. We also have some links and information for you. And there is, of course, the subscribe button. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
I'm a Hare Krishna, and I approve this message. Subscribe.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,